And just for the record here, everything I'm about to say in this video is my personal opinion. One of the biggest things that irritates me, like really bugs me, is when somebody says leasing is a humongous waste of money. Literally irritates the crap out of me when I hear this, because it's a very, very generalized statement. It's a blanket statement that's completely false. I just made a blanket statement about it being completely false. It's not 100% accurate. I'd say in about 1 out of 10 cases, leasing is a humongous waste of money. But the other 9 times out of 10, you've got to define what a humongous waste of money is. Because either way you look at buying or leasing, the car is going to depreciate regardless. And I think what it really all boils down to when people talk about leasing being a humongous waste of money is the interest component in any lease. One important aspect of leasing is how much interest that you're being charged on the lease, you know, how high the money factor is, and if interest is being upcharged unnecessarily. And the other aspect of this whole thing, of this whole leasing thing, is whether or not leasing is even right for you. Like, how many miles a year do you drive? Do you tend to damage up your cars a lot? Are you the correct candidate to lease out a car? This argument about 20 years ago that I'm making right now was a lot different. Leasing didn't work how it works today, with most leases being closed-ended leases. A lot of the leases back then were open-ended leases, with the residuals being a lot higher than what the actual value of the car was, so that people ended up having like this larger balloon that they had to cover at the end of their lease. It doesn't work like that anymore. These manufacturers want their cars back so they can profit on them again on the certified market. And I just think that leasing in particular is one of those cases where if you're expecting for it to be more beneficial than buying a car, you're 100% wrong. However, when you actually break down the math and figure out exactly how much that used car is going for on the market versus what the buyout and your overall expenditure is on the lease for the 3 years, you'll pretty much notice on like 90% of the cars on the market that these two values are pretty close, depending on how good of a deal you got on that lease, as in if you didn't pay full price for that lease, if you got a decent enough discount. Another thing to notice, people always complain about these fees on the lease. You brought back the car all damaged up, all dinged up, or maybe you went over mileage and you got charged for the excess mileage on the lease. But say for instance, you purchased the car and 3 years or 5 years down the line, you drove more than what the typical person would drive, and you're driving like 20,000 miles a year. You return a 5-year-old car with 100,000 miles. And what's to say that that car is gonna be worth top dollar? It's not gonna be worth the same as a lot of the cars that are 5 years old with only 50,000 miles. And typically once that car starts to exceed a certain mileage threshold, KBB really doesn't hold any accuracy when it comes down to this, because there's probably a lot of other factors that are playing into the whole mileage thing, like, what's the general condition of the interior and exterior? Are you trading it in with bald tires? Does it need major maintenance? If you look at the guidelines of a lease, they even allow for wear and tear, as in small dings, small dents. You can return the tires with nearly, not completely, nearly bald tires, or 30 of an inch. And nobody's really looking out for you when you're buying a car like this. And right now, I want to remind you guys, for me, where I'm coming from mentally is coming from very beat up cars that I used to drive. My first cars were not leased, they weren't brand new, they were more than 10 years old. And the issue that I have with people telling others that leasing doesn't make any sense, that's 100% accurate. In the same way that me having purchased this camera brand new doesn't make any sense. As in, I could have probably bought a used one, maybe with a little bit less features, for around half the price, which in 3 or 4 years will be completely worthless. Did that make sense? So my whole argument right now is that anybody that's leased a car before knows enough to compare the process and actual cost of a lease versus having purchased the car, and knowing the headache involved when trading in a purchased car, quite possibly with a loan payoff that's probably more than what the actual value of the car is. and the comfort involved when returning a lease and not having headaches like, let me shop around for trade value, get major mechanical things fixed, and obviously the warranty aspect, and having that concern as well, which nobody really tells you about when they tell you, buy a used car, you'll save a lot more money. I think one of the major aspects in saving the most is probably buying a few-year-old used car, hopefully still under warranty or cheap enough to fix. And at the end of the day, if we lived in a world where, all we wanted to drive were cheaper, used, and non-luxurious cars, this statement of leasing doesn't make any sense would probably hold a lot truer. However, that's not the case. So guys, I hope I didn't bug some of you with my rant, but this is just my take on this statement about leasing doesn't make any sense. I don't like when people say that because I truly want to educate somebody that thinks leasing doesn't make sense. However, they probably won't know until they go through both scenarios, whether or not it actually does make sense or doesn't make sense. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section. Let me know if you agree, disagree, if you think I'm completely wrong or completely right. Love to hear about it. Thank you so much for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.